What's up everyone, Doyler here, and it's time for my orange artifact tier list. This is actually something that people have been asking for a while, as new or early game players don't really know which orange artifacts to keep and which ones to get rid of. Now keep in mind, this is going to be non-pay to win artifacts. I will cover pay to win artifacts in a later video, so let's jump right in. In our F tier, we've got the anti-assassin, mage, priest, and ranger artifacts. These are going to be your Fiend's Touch, your Ancient God's Whisper, your Eye of the Hell, and your Azrael. Now, these are artifacts that you're really only going to use very early game to replace your red or green artifacts, and as soon as you're able to, you're going to feed them off. Now, note when I say feed them off for these orange artifacts, generally speaking, you're going to want to save all of your orange artifacts for Ormus events, and I'll include a link to that up at the top. The reason for that is the exchange rate for both orange artifacts and orange exclusive artifacts is much better than your red, green, purple, and yellow and blue artifacts. That said, early on, you are probably going to need to use a few of these, especially in the F tier, to level up your useful standard orange artifacts. But once you're able to sort of max out the 3, 4, 5, 6 artifacts you need, start saving these for those Ormus events. Next up, we've got our D tier. In this, we've got your anti-warrior artifact, Nail of Destiny, as well as, in the screenshot, the Warhammer of Hopelessness. Now, Warhammer of Hopelessness is an anti-class artifact, an anti-class exclusive artifact. Now, this is a catch-all for all of the anti-class exclusive artifacts. I didn't want to include all of them because the list would grow so long. This is going to be any anti-class artifact, other than ones I'm going to cover later, especially ones that fall in that F tier already. So anti-mage, anti-assassin, anti-ranger, and anti-priest. Now, let's cover Nail before I get into the exclusives. So Nail of Destiny is in the D tier because it does have a use for Penny for Seal Land 20. Now, we know that Penny is not required for Seal Land 20 anymore with a Nasuke or multiple Sherlocks, but if you do build Penny as a first E5, she's still viable, and do you want to clear Seal Land 20, the Nail of Destiny is actually her most optimal artifact for that. Outside of that, again, these D tier artifacts you can get rid of as soon as possible. Now, the orange exclusive artifacts, I do want to cover those. There are a ton of them, they're all fairly similar, but all of them look something like this. So Elf tiers is 90% damage against Priest and 2700 attack, so same as Eye of the Hell, with a bonus 14% attack for Forest. The reason these are in the D tier instead of the F tier is because this is a decent amount of attack and anti-class damage. You're going to want to use these on your really any heroes until you get those better artifacts. They're worth keeping around, but again, eventually you are going to fodder off basically 80 to 90% of them to Ormus, other than some ones I'm going to cover later. Next up, we've got our C tier. These are artifacts that you probably won't use forever, but they do have either a niche use or a pretty useful early game use, so you'll want to hold on to them until you're certain you're done with them. First up, we have the Guilty Crown. Now, Guilty Crown is a nice balanced artifact. Its biggest problem is it's not the best at anything. So Guilty Crown is an attack HP dark exclusive artifact. Now, the reason it gets in the C tier is because attack and HP is a great balance. Every hero wants them, even if they're a support hero. That said, if you have a hero you want to survive, you're going to be wanting using some of the survivability artifacts I'm going to cover later. And if you have an attacking hero, you're going to want to use attacking focused ones. That said, even on a non-dark hero, this is still a pretty solid artifact until you have something better. Plus, control immunity is kind of nice on a dark hero if they don't have it. Next up in the C tier is Invisible. Invisible is a non-exclusive artifact that gives HP and block. This is a pretty solid free-to-play artifact for a defensive hero, and is arguably better on Horse for super early game than the artifact I'm going to cover later. That said, it's not the best non-exclusive defensive artifact, but it is passable, and it's something you'll want to keep around at least until you've replaced it with one of the later artifacts. Last up in the C tier, we have, technically it's just Reaper Scythe, but it's really a few artifacts that fill the same niche. Now, this niche is Mim Cheese artifacts. Technically speaking, Mim Cheese artifacts in order of priority are Kiss of Ghost, Antler's Cane, and then orange exclusive artifacts, actually. So if you take a look at this artifact, it gives 90% damage against Warrior and 90% skill damage. Skill damage is huge for Mims. death passive, and damage against warrior tries to help him out with those pesky Garudas that counter him. Now Reaper Scythe is technically the best since it is going to do more damage against Garudas, but I also put stuff like Taboo Seal in the same bottom of C tier as it will give that 90% skill damage. If you plan on building Mimchis for IDA and Guild Wars, you'll want to hold on to these, but they're not a huge priority. I still think they do fit in the C tier just because of how powerful Mimchis is in those features. Next up, we have the B tier. Now, this is the first tier of artifacts where you'll probably want to hold on to these artifacts for a really long time, but you might eventually get rid of them. This is the first tier where you may not want to feed them at all early and just hold on to them until you know you're done with them. So the first artifact in the B tier is Heavenly Bead. This is an attack precision orange non-exclusive artifact. Now, attack, obviously always useful, 18% solid number. 18% is going to be higher than the percentage-based attack for orange exclusive artifacts if you're not in that class, or sorry, if you're not in that faction. Precision counters block in addition to giving you some extra damage. Okay, the skill cards don't cover it, but in addition to reducing the defender's chance to block, Precision will also give you a bonus attack damage to your attack base damage per point of precision. This is 0.3% per point of precision, so Heavenly Bead is giving you damage from both its attack stat and its precision stat. It is, generally speaking, the best free-to-play damage artifact if your hero doesn't care that much about crit. Next up in the B tier is going to be the Echo of Death. Mind you, not all of these tiers are sorted in order. Generally speaking, I'd actually put Echo of Death higher, but it is what it is. Now, Echo of Death is going to be the best free-to-play artifact, best damaging free-to-play artifact if your hero does care about crit, which is going to be most damage dealers. Now, this gives the same 18% attack as Heavenly Bead, but also gives 15% crit, which obviously is going to give you better chance for crits, which are going to hit harder, and so on. The only time you'll really always use a Heavenly Bead over Echo of Death is maybe somewhere like Aspen Dungeon, where you're getting 40% bonus crit, but for most damaging heroes and most game modes, Echo of Death is going to give you a slight edge over Heavenly Bead, and that's why I have both of these in the B tier. Honestly, I would save all of them for your eventual Guild Wars and IDA, but that's really up to you. Now, we're up to the A tier, and this is the artifacts you shouldn't be getting rid of unless you're a Mega Whale or Doyler will hunt you down and yell at you. First up, we have Wind God Messenger and all of the similar class exclusive artifacts. Wind God Messenger, if you don't know, is a free-to-play speed artifact. It gives 66 speed and 14% HP. This is the most speed you can get from an artifact outside of the pay-to-win artifacts. Now, A and B does give 70 speed, and Rui does give 75 speed, so you will not outspeed them, but it's still a free-to-play orange non-exclusive artifact that will give you speed and HP. Now, inside this A tier, along with this, I do include all of the other class-specific, faction-specific speed artifacts like Scythe, which is speed HP and crit for Forest, Treads, which are speed HP, crit for Fortress, and so on. If you've ever done any PvP or watched any videos, you'll know that speed is still king. Outspeeding your opponents means you go first, and you have a chance to kill them before they kill you. You honestly can't have too many Wind God Messengers. Even until recently, I've run Wind God Messenger on my Drake until I got another A and B. Next up in the A tier is a orange exclusive artifact, but I actually rank it here because it's useful outside of just the faction it's specified for, and that is Sword of Justice. Sword of Justice is an 18% attack and 30% holy damage artifact with a 15% crit bonus for light heroes. Now, the attack and holy damage alone put it as, generally speaking, the best non-pay-to-win damage artifact. I know I haven't made a video covering holy damage yet, but holy damage is effectively extra damage on top of your total damage that is armor ignoring. It's not armor break. Armor break effectively reduces their damage. This is bonus damage on top and ignores their armor. For most game modes, Sword of Justice will outdamage Heavenly Bead and Echo of Death for your heroes, and that's even if you're not a light hero, and the 15% crit is just icing on the cake. If you have this artifact, you should probably generally be saving it unless you're kitted out with antlers, canes, and so on. Last, and certainly not least, we've got our S tier. These are artifacts that, unless you have 60 of each of them, you should really be holding on to them. First up, and honestly the one I'd probably put on top of this list if I had to choose between the S tier, is Magic Source. You've seen it in a ton of Seal Land Clear videos. You've seen it in PvP. You'll even see it in my Void video soon, but this is the free-to-play energy artifact. It gives you 50 energy and 50% skill damage. The reason this is such a great artifact is your heroes start with 50 energy on turn 1. If you equip this, they will start with 100 energy on turn 1, and they'll be able to do a turn 1 active. Generally speaking, your actives are better than your basics attacks, and you can maybe debuff or kill some heroes before they get a chance to attack back. Side bonus, 50% skill damage just means more damage for you. You should, and this again also includes all of the class specific ones. So Orb of Annihilation, which gives 40% extra skill damage to dark heroes. Unless you have 60 of these, you might want them for IDA and Guild Wars one day. There's so many heroes where starting with a round 1 active is great. I keep 4 of these on my Oberon Cheese army for Guild Wars alone. They're worth their weight in gold, and if you manage to RNG your way to a bunch of these as an early game player, like my Horse free-to-play account did, check out that Seal Land Clear, you'll be doing much better than someone who doesn't. Next up in the S tier is going to be what I'm still going to be calling Fearless Armor. It's what the devs renamed to Plate of Courageous. It is the damage reduction artifact. This is the best free-to-play survivability and defensive artifact. Damage reduction is huge, as you guessed it by the name. It reduces your damage and it gives 14% HP on top of it. Now, again, this section is going to include almost all of the faction-specific ones. So Rune's Power, which is the same thing with 18% bonus for Forced, and so on. If you have a hero you want to keep alive, there's nothing better than throwing Fearless on them. This is a great artifact for Horus. It's a great artifact for any of your tanky heroes. It's nice on heroes like Ada in Aspen Dungeon, and so on. Just like Magic Source, you can never have too many of these. Please never feed this unless you're a Mega Whale who's just trying to ditch artifacts. The last artifact I want to cover in S tier technically falls under my Fearless Armor definition, but it's Spear of Destiny. Now, it's again just another damage reduction HP artifact, but it also has a side of holy damage for light heroes. I wanted to call out this one specifically because this is arguably the best in slot for heroes like Ada, especially for Aspen Dungeon, before you get into pay-to-win artifacts like Crown and so on. So I just wanted to mention it briefly because while it is just a generic DR HP artifact for non-light heroes, that holy damage turns a survivable hero into a killer and is honestly amazing on heroes like Ada. So that's it for all of the artifacts I want to cover. Hopefully I got my rankings right, but let me know in the comments if you have any arguments or suggestions for the tier list. And yeah, stay tuned for the pay-to-win artifact tier list, which will be coming out hopefully soon. For more of my beginner guides, you can check out this playlist in the top left corner. And if you want to see my video on glorious relics, as well as how you can earn and how you should be spending them, you can check out this video up here. Other than that, don't forget to hit that subscribe button to help grow the channel.